Incredible rescue. Stranded girl. Transformed by a Marine and his K9. During a life-saving snowstorm, Emily gripped the steering wheel of her old sedan as icy particles lashed against the windshield. The Colorado Rockies towered around her, but all she could think about was the uncertainty looming over her life. Just weeks away from graduation, her dreams of veterinary school flickered like the headlights struggling to pierce through the swirling snow. Her father's unexpected job loss had turned her world upside down, leaving her aching with the weight of expectations, academic achievements cradling none of the stability she craved. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The burden twisted her stomach into knots, fighting against the queasiness rising within her. Would her family even be able to afford the tuition? Could they even be proud of her if she couldn't find a way to help? Was she selfish to dream of being a veterinarian when her own family was drowning in financial worry? The road ahead faded into a white void, mirroring her own spiraling thoughts, and she pressed her palms harder against the wheel, searching for clarity amid the chaos. Before she could center herself, an unsettling groan emanated from her tires. Panic bubbled in her chest as the car began to skid across the road. "No, no, no," she gasped, her voice lost in the wind's howling chorus. Her heart raced as the car veered, spiraling off the embankment and into a thick barrier of snow, bringing her to a jolting stop. Alone inside her vehicle, Emily's breath quickened. She was stranded, trapped in a growing storm that mirrored her inner turmoil. She could almost visualize her future slipping further from her grasp, just like the weather swirled outside her window. What do I do? The question lingered, but there were no answers, only a cacophony of her self-doubt echoing in her ears. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the snow danced violently outside, Emily's thoughts darkened. The isolation crept in, wrapping around her like the cold creeping into her car. She clutched her phone, but the signal was gone. Her lifeline severed, just like her hopes of affording college. Would she be resigned to work dead-end jobs forever? The dreams she had held onto, visions of rescue animals, healing touches, and laughter in a bustling clinic, faded into a stark reality. Meanwhile, outside, a shadow moved against the relentless white. Jake, navigating the unforgiving storm with his loyal K9. Max felt the weight of despair burdening his own heart. Every snowflake that fell reminded him of his struggles. His mission after serving had gone unseen, his own battles making him feel insignificant. When he spotted Emily's abandoned vehicle, a flicker of purpose ignited deep within. With determination fueling him, he forged his way into the storm. The air thick with impending danger and uncertainty, he knew he had to reach her before nature claimed another victim. As he pressed forward, the swirling chaos surrounding him echoed Emily's heartfelt anguish. Would they both find salvation amidst the tempest? The deafening crack of an avalanche tumbled nearby, shaking them from their individual spirals. Darkness closed in, the storm intensifying around them. Emily felt a pulse of dread. She had to confront her fears. Suddenly, she wasn't just a stranded girl. She was a fighter. Would Jake arrive in time to save her, or would the weight of their pasts bury them both? The swirling snow outside seemed to come alive, a whirlwind of chaos enveloping Emily in a cocoon of uncertainty. Her heart pounded, a metronome of fear matching the tempest around her. She could feel the chill seeping deeper into her bones, not just from the cold air but from the sinking realization that choices, both made and unmade, had led her here, stranded and vulnerable. Breath steadying, Emily searched her mind for a plan. Frantic thoughts of her father's inability to find work mingled with memories of the countless hours she had devoted to her studies. Each exam, each volunteer hour at the animal shelter had been meant to propel her toward a goal. But now, struggling with the idea of survival, she wondered if all of it had been for naught. "Think," she whispered hoarsely, feeling urgency mixed with desperation. Refusing to surrender to despair, She began to assess her surroundings, glancing at the back seat. A small backpack rested there, filled with her textbooks and some snacks she had hastily thrown in earlier. That was her first step. Leaning toward her studies even now could serve a purpose. Unzipping the bag, she pulled out her thermos of hot cocoa and took a careful sip. The warmth spread through her, emboldening her spirit. A small spark of resolve ignited, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. I can do this, she thought, reminding herself of the toughness she had cultivated through years of hard work and dedication toward her dream of becoming a veterinarian. Tuning her mind to the problem at hand, she examined her options. There was a sense of power in acknowledging her agency, even in this situation. She could stay put and wait for help, if it arrived in time, or she could take control and try to signal for assistance. Her heart raced as she considered moving, fighting the urge to just hunker down. The prospect of stepping into the blizzard again filled her with dread, but the pressure of her circumstances galvanized her. If Jake, the stranger who had found her car, was out there, she would have to do whatever it took to get his attention. She retrieved her flashlight and began to flick it on and off, sending out pulses of light into the snowy abyss. Meanwhile, Jake's instincts propelled him through the storm like an arrow released from a bow. Each step through the drifts was a reminder of what he fought for, his own sense of purpose, the weight of his past not allowing him to let others suffer. He could sense another presence amidst the chaos, a flicker of light amidst the swirling gray. Emily's signal pulsed through the blizzard, and for the first time since she had left home, she felt flickers of hope. Come on, she murmured, straining to see through the swirling curtain of white. In that moment, doubt began to slip away, replaced by a steely determination. Whatever awaited on the other side would not define her. Her response to it would. As the wind howled, her breath caught in a mix of fear and excitement. She was more than just the fears that had held her back. She was the dreams she had envisioned. And then suddenly, an outline emerged through the storm. Jake had found her, his figure steadily forging onward with Max leading the way, focused and resolute. The world slowed for a heartbeat as joy surged in her chest, giving her the courage to embrace the unexpected twists life threw her way. Would this encounter ignite the transformation they both needed, breaking through the barriers of self-doubt? As Jake closed in on Emily, they were both on the precipice of revelation. A storm not just of snow, but of their own resilience. Yet, as their paths converged, the grounds beneath them trembled. A new avalanche signal, more profound than the physical snow threatening them. They were each about to confront the realities of their choices and consider the futures they dared to dream about. Emily felt the sharp bite of potential, and the time had come to confront not just the storm but her own fears. As Jake approached, a surge of emotions swirled, intertwining their fates. How would they both emerge from this terrifying tempest, and what truths would they uncover about themselves in the process? The sudden chill of realization washed over Emily as Jake reached her, the storm erupting around them like a wild symphony. His presence felt both daunting and reassuring, an anchor amidst the whirlwind of her thoughts. The warmth ignited by her cocoa faded into the frigid air, yet Jake's resolve shone through the darkness, radiating a strength she desperately needed. "Are you okay?" he blurted, breath visible in the frigid air. Despite his question, Emily noted more than concern on his face. There was a shared understanding of fighting against the odds. This moment felt transformative. "I am now," she replied, her voice steadier than she anticipated. With those words, she felt an unexpected wave of confidence wash over her. They stood not just as two stranded souls, but as allies ready to face the onslaught together. "Let's get you out of here," Jake urged, glancing around as Max settled next to him, tail wagging in anticipation. It struck Emily that this moment was pivotal, not just for her survival, but for how she viewed herself in the world. The snowstorm had stripped away distractions, leaving only the raw essence of her being. Jake's clarity and planning invigorated her. She admired how he assessed their environment, calculating the best escape route. She could almost feel the transformation in her own mind, pushing back thoughts that screamed of defeat. This wasn't just about survival, it was about reclaiming her narrative. "Do you have any extra clothes?" Jake asked, scanning her outfit. It was a simple inquiry, but underneath it lay a deeper current, an invitation to equip herself against the harshness of the elements, both external and internal. "I packed some layers in the car," Emily said, recalling how she had thought ahead, preparing for her drive. This small nugget of foresight began to feel significant. Perhaps she had more strength and resourcefulness within her than she had previously acknowledged. "Let's grab what we can carry and head towards that ridge," Jake responded, pointing toward a less dense part of the storm. He moved swiftly, leading the way but ensuring she was close behind. The blizzard's fury intensified, but with each step forward, Emily felt the confusion lift a little. She was opting not just for physical safety but also for a mental shift. As they walked, Jake shared snippets of his own experiences, tales of previous rescues and the moments that shaped him. Emily listened intently, feeling invigorated by his candor. There was courage in exposing vulnerabilities, and with each word, she understood that she too had stories within her. Fears accumulated, lessons learned through her struggles. "I used to doubt myself a lot," Jake admitted as they haltingly trudged through the snow. "But facing these storms, literal and figurative, it's helped me see my own worth. Sometimes you just have to step into the chaos to discover who you really are." His words resonated within her, reverberating against her own barriers of self-doubt. She wanted to shout back at the storm, "I will not be defined by this chaos." Instead, she continued walking, propelled by a newfound sense of purpose, sparked from his vulnerability. "Maybe I can be like that too," she thought, considering her dream of being a veterinarian. If she embraced this moment, acknowledged her fears, she could reclaim the power that was inherently hers. Stepping into the unknown had never felt so empowering. Yet, just as they approached the ridge, the ground rumbled ominously. The avalanche that had merely danced around them now threatened to engulf everything. The very choice to confront the storm had become a test of truth, a revelation moment that could either solidify Emily's transformation or plunge her deeper into uncertainty. With Jake's hand gripping her shoulder, they braced against the impending chaos. The moment sang with tension, suspended in a blend of fear and exhilaration. Would she unfurl her potential even more when faced with rapid, pressing treachery? "Stay close," Jake shouted over the roar of the wind, their fates caught in the balance. As the mountain relinquished its grip, Emily knew she was teetering on the brink of her greatest test yet. What hidden capabilities lay dormant within her, waiting to be unleashed amidst the storm? The truth beckoned as danger loomed near. The roar of the avalanche echoed through the mountain like a monster unleashed. Emily felt her heart pound in time with the chaotic symphony surrounding them. As Jake pulled her closer, she could sense the significance of this moment. It was no longer just about a physical escape, but a pivotal turning point in how she perceived herself. "Run, Emily!" he shouted, urgency thick in his voice. Even as fear surged through her, clarity emerged in the form of Jake's command. She wasn't merely reacting. She was choosing to respond, to run with purpose. The snow beneath them transformed into a powerful, shifting current. Every step she took was an act of defiance against the tremors of doubt that had once defined her life. Memories of her past flooded through her mind. Those moments when she hesitated, when fear stunted her growth. The gusts whipped against her, but instead of retreating into herself, she ran faster, feeling alive in a way she never had before. Jake's presence remained a beacon, guiding her. The wind carried shouts and growls of swirling snowflakes, but Emily could focus on his voice, the mantra of survival. She had been willing to leave her comfort zone, hungry for clarity. They zigzagged through the ever-thickening blizzard. Emily's breath fogged ahead of her, merging with the chaos, pushing her further toward something monumental. The whisper of doubt flickered in her mind, asking if she could keep this pace. But she doused it, refocusing on how far she had come instead of how far she had yet to go. Each stride became a declaration of her strength, each breath laced with the grit that only emerged in adversity. "Keep moving," Jake urged again, his fierce determination mingling with hers. Each phrase felt like an electrical charge, igniting something within her. She mirrored Jake's resolve, recognizing the depth of her own capabilities. Just beyond the ridge, a sliver of light pierced through the storm. It was like a comforting hand, reaching out through the gusts. an oasis amidst an overwhelming tempest. Emily felt a surge of hope, the promise of safety pulling them closer to where they needed to be. Then, in an instant, the ground beneath her faltered. A crack split the earth beside her. Panic hit like a wall, paralyzing her for a brief second. But as the rigid fear clamped around her heart, the fight within her surged forward. "No!" she gasped, forcing her legs into action. In a heartbeat, determination surged through her as she leaped forward, narrowly avoiding the treacherous pit that threatened to swallow her. The adrenaline worked wonders, catalyzing growth she had only dared to dream of. They reached the edge of the ridge, lungs burning, legs shaking. Jake turned to her, his eyes igniting with a mix of pride and urgency. "You did it!" His voice broke through the noise, grounding her even further. Yet even as relief swept over her, a tether of doubt lingered. The avalanche was a part of the mountain's fury, a reflection of her inner chaos. Had she truly embraced the person she could be, or was this a fleeting moment fueled by adrenaline? "Next time," she whispered, the words almost lost to the wind. "I want to be ready." A question loomed in the air between them. Could she sustain this newfound resolve after the storm? The avalanche may have settled down, but the internal struggles were far from over. Jake's response, however, was lost in the raucous wind. The infinitesimal pull of uncertainty tightened around her as they stood on the precipice of the ridge, a landscape of possibilities stretching out before them, yet one more daunting test looming in her path. What awaited them on the other side as they descended from the heights? The storm, or perhaps a deeper reckoning, was far from finished. As they descended the ridge, the ground shifted beneath Emily's feet, with every uncertain step. The blizzard had not relented. It transformed the mountain into a landscape of white fury and sharp shadows. Yet, Emily felt a subtle shift within her, a newfound resilience that came from the edge of danger. "Stay close," Jake instructed, his voice steady despite the raging storm. The urgency of the moment demanded her attention. It allowed her something she had never fully embraced before: focus in chaos. She realized for the first time how easily she had let life sweep her into complacency. The familiar patterns of doubt screamed within, but they were becoming quieter, swallowed by her growing strength. Emily's thoughts drifted to her career back home as they navigated the treacherous path. The fears that had once defined her, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, felt distant now, almost laughable. She had always despaired over trivial challenges, but this avalanche, this very real threat to her life, was a stark reminder of the weak barriers she had constructed around herself. If she could survive this, she could conquer her own mind. A treacherous gust of wind nearly knocked her off balance. "Keep your footing," Jake shouted, steadying her with a firm grip. His confidence surged through her. "Right," she replied with newfound clarity, understanding that it wasn't only about moving forward physically, but also about insisting on not being consumed by fear. She had to plan, strategize, and execute with intention. The blizzard was no longer just an obstacle. It was a canvas on which she was beginning to paint a version of herself she hadn't known existed. As they pushed forward, Emily began to articulate her internal shifts. This expedition was more than a rescue. It was a crucible, reshaping her very essence. She took note of every deliberate step she made, how each movement required calculation and courage, igniting an intellectual thrill that beckoned her to discover just how far she could go. "Focus on the horizon," Jake directed, his tone calm yet commanding. "When you look around, it can get overwhelming. Keep your goals in sight." She locked onto the vague outline of the treetops in the distance, a clear target amidst the swirling chaos. Her heart raced with determination, each beat fueling her resolve. She recognized this was not merely a flight from disaster. It was a gateway toward unearthing the fearless Emily lurking within. "Every step is a choice," she whispered to herself, a mantra forming as they braved the storm. The rhythm of her feet in the snow began to take on a symphonic quality, each crunch emphasizing her commitment to not just survive, but to thrive. But even as her mind began to race with possibilities, the ground gave another ominous creak beneath them. Anxiety clawed back into her thoughts. What lay ahead could be another measure of her limits. Would she be ready for it? or crumble at the next hurdle. "Jake," she started, catching her breath mid-stride, "what if we don't make it?" The weight of doubt, though distant now, began to seep back into her thoughts like the chilling wind. "Then we fight through it," he replied, meeting her gaze with unwavering conviction. "Remember, you've already made it this far." Those words were a catalyst. They fueled her resolve amid the looming uncertainty. For the first time, she truly understood the parallel between her struggles on this mountain and her professional life, a continuous series of challenges requiring persistence and grit. As they eventually neared the tree line, a flicker of movement up ahead caught Emily's attention. Was it salvation or further peril? Her heart thumped louder against her chest, the thrill of the unknown promising either relief or another trial. Steeling herself, she didn't hesitate. "Jake, let's go!" What awaited them in that direction could change everything, but one thing was clear. She was no longer the woman she had been before the storm. Whatever happened next would challenge yet again her grasp on resilience. Would she rise? Or would the chaos envelop her once more? The flicker of movement ahead sharpened Emily's senses as she converged on it with intensity. Her heart, now synced with the rhythm of the crunching snow, thundered in her chest. Was it hope or danger lying just beyond the tree line? In that moment, uncertainty coursed through her veins, yet it was laced with an adrenaline-fueled determination that she clung to fiercely. As they moved closer, the indistinct shape coalesced into view. It was a lone figure, crouched low with a backpack, an explorer, a rescue team member, or perhaps an unfortunate victim. Each possibility summoned a swirl of tension within her, confronting the apprehension that had tainted her thoughts moments ago. Jake edged forward, motioning for her to stay back, but she wasn't willing to let him face whatever awaited them alone. "This is it, Emily," she muttered, steeling herself. The blizzard's wrath whipped at her face, but her focus sharpened. She had come too far to retreat into the shadows of fear again. She volunteered a single step forward, then another, gaining momentum from her resolve. As she approached, the figure shifted, revealing a weather-beaten face framed by a beanie. "Help! I'm a rescuer stationed here. I've been trying to get status updates from my team." The weight of his words collided with her instincts. He was one of the good guys. Relief washed over her for just an instant. "We're here to help," she called back, buoyed by a rush of solidarity. A connection was made, not just through words but by the understanding that they all faced an unforgiving environment together. Jake joined them at her side, and they quickly analyzed the situation. "How far are your team members?" he asked sharply, assessing their new ally. The urgency of the storm mattered. Every second could represent a life saved or lost. The rescuer gestured towards a path veiled in snowflakes swirling violently around them. "They went to find a missing hiker north of here. I was supposed to stay for a relay check, but the weather's taken a turn." Emily felt that familiar tug of fear but suppressed it, prioritizing the tasks at hand. "We can help you relay that message. What do you need from us?" The man's eyes met hers, and she sensed a flicker of hope reflected in his depths. "I need you all to get word out. If we don't contact base soon, we risk losing valuable time." Without hesitation, Emily took charge, unfurling plans in her mind like a mental map. She had fought through her psychological storms, and now her tangible skills gathered into focus, a newfound clarity that came with making intentional choices. "Jake, we'll find the safest route to communicate with your team. We need to move fast." The corner of Jake's mouth broke into a grin, pride evident in his gaze as he regained his composure. "That's the spirit. We may have a chance if we get moving quickly. Every second counts." No longer standing on the sidelines of her own life, Emily took the lead, translating her internal growth into actionable strategy. They were enveloped in a landscape of white, but she was no longer just a victim of her surroundings. Each decision, each forceful stride toward action became a testament to her development, a silent declaration of her resolve. Yet, as they began their hurried trek, she felt a familiar shadow, self-doubt creeping back. Questions assaulted her mind. What if their efforts were in vain? What if the storm claimed them next? Each thought wrestled fiercely within her, familiar fears echoing like distant howls in the wind. Stay present, she reminded herself, echoing Jake's earlier advice. But just as quickly, she found clarity emerging again. She couldn't allow past uncertainty to dictate her future. With her breath visible in the frozen air, they moved through the storm while Emily systematically calculated each step. Every footfall painted a picture of progress. The emerging realization burned bright within her. The only real peril was not attempting to commit to action, to strive for something greater than oneself. As they approached the edge of the tree line, a howl sliced through the harsh wind, a sound so raw and haunting that it sent shivers down her spine. What had begun as a journey toward aid now felt like it was spiraling into something unforeseen, a revelation lurking just beyond the veil. She glanced back at Jake and the rescuer, determination fortifying her resolve. "We're not afraid of this storm, let's keep moving," she urged, sprouting a seed of belief that perhaps they could change this narrative. But just as the words left her mouth, a sudden quake echoed beneath them, the ground shifting ominously once more. Something unseen stirred in the depths of the storm. Emily felt the ground tremble beneath her boots, an unsettling shift that mirrored the churn of anxiety in her gut. She cast a quick glance at Jake, whose eyes mirrored her apprehension. The rescuer, visibly shaken, adjusted his grip on his backpack, tightening his stance. "Did you feel that?" Jake asked, his voice edged with urgency. "Yes, it could be an avalanche," the rescuer snapped, panic flickering in his eyes. Emily's mind raced ahead. Avalanches weren't just nature's fury, they were the culmination of miscalculated moments and unchecked fears. She suppressed the raw instinct to flee, her thoughts now a flurry of strategy. "We need to move to higher ground, quickly," she instructed, pointing toward a slope that seemed more stable, free from the weight of accumulated snow. As they picked up the pace, Emily felt a growing clarity. They were threading through the storm, wading into chaos, but with each calculated decision, she reclaimed her sense of agency. The adrenaline surged in her veins, and for the first time since this ordeal began, a spark of confidence ignited. "Emily, wait!" Jake's voice broke through. She turned just in time to see him kneeling, hand extended toward a snow-covered radio. In an age where technology often abandoned hope, the radio symbolized their lifeline. Her heart raced as she crossed over. "Let's get it working," she urged, kneeling beside him. Static crackled deep in the device. Her heart thundered with each passing second. They whispered hurried voices into the speaker, coordinates, the urgency of their rescue mission swirling in their breaths. Questions echoed in her mind, amplifying the urgency. What if they were cut off? What if this moment of connection faded into silence? And then, clarity struck again. "Can you remember the exact frequency?" she asked sharply, both to stabilize her nerves and force Jake to grab hold of the task. The pressure was on him, yes, but it was on her too. It was a test of resilience through shared responsibility. "Yes," he nodded, his determination rekindled. "We just need to keep trying." The next few attempts felt like a dance, the struggle against their surroundings, the rhythm of survival pulsating between them. With each click and hiss, Emily's resolve deepened. The storm was relentless, but they were warriors against the wind. Then, just as doubt threatened to creep back in, a sudden, clear voice emerged from the radio. "Rescue team, do you read me? Over." It was like the sun breaking through clouds, a voice anchoring Emily in that tumultuous sea of uncertainty. The rescuer grabbed the radio, fingers steadying against the white-knuckled grip of hope. "This is X-Ray 49 reporting in. We're stranded but alive. We have 2 civilians assisting. Over." "Copy that. You'll need to hold position. We're dispatching a team your way," came the reply, and with it, a liberating sense of purpose surged through Emily. Their message had reached someone. The stakes were high, but the burden of despair was lifted just enough. "See? We're making progress," she said, trying to encourage Jake. The tremors of her earlier fears began to slip away, nudged aside by burgeoning confidence. What she had assumed were barriers were now mere stepping stones. They stood for a moment, huddled there, the howling storm seeming less ferocious in the face of their combined resolve. Yet another howl echoed outside, sharper now, and unmistakably closer. A chill swept through her, and her earlier revelations morphed into something darker. What if they weren't just fighting the storm? Suddenly, Emily understood she had to confront the true core of her anxiety. It wasn't merely about survival. It was a fight to prove her worth in moments of chaos, to withstand the gnawing doubts that lingered like shadows. She wasn't just a participant anymore. She was becoming a leader. But how far would that leadership take her? "Let's move. We can't stay here," she urged, her voice commanding. With each stride, uncertainty began to ebb as determination surged forward, but a heavier weight loomed ahead. The realization that no path came without its perils, especially now as the ground had begun to shift again beneath their feet. As they pressed onward, the storm's whispers promising new trials teased at her thoughts. A confrontation with fears long buried awaited her just beyond the next bend, the true test of her character lurking right beneath the surface. Would she be able to face what awaited them, or would the storm claim her just as it threatened to do now? With every calculated step, Emily could feel the weight of her own leadership pressing against her shoulders. The radio static had transformed their despair into a flicker of hope. But that hope came with an awareness. They were still trapped in a tumultuous swirl, and doubt remained a relentless adversary. "Keep moving!" she shouted over the storm's howl, her heart thundering with both fear and resolve as they navigated through the knee-deep snow. The biting cold pricked at her skin, gnawing at her confidence like a predator waiting to pounce. Each crunch underfoot seemed to echo the internal dialogue she had been struggling to silence. Was she truly capable? Jake stumbled, nearly losing his footing, and in that moment panic flashed behind his eyes. "I don't know if I can keep this up," he gasped, his breath clouding in front of him. Emily turned sharply, catching the doubt etched on his face. "Yes, you can. Remember what we accomplished with the radio. We're not in this alone." Her voice was firm, yet she felt the tremor of uncertainty lurking beneath her own bravado. But what was she without a clear direction? The gravity of her responsibilities pressed her to visualize where they might go next. The whispered despair of the storm pulled at her, threatening to cloud her judgment with horror stories of abandonment and defeat. She had to confront that. "Higher ground is our best option," she reminded him, her mind already running strategic scenarios as she scanned their surroundings. "That ridge over there looks like it might offer shelter." Jake nodded, inspired by her conviction, and they pressed forward again, the determination radiating between them like a beacon in their darkening world. Step by step, the acute awareness of their precarious situation hardened into something fierce. She was not just enduring like Jake, she was leading. As they moved, Emily's thoughts turned inward, dissecting the fears that had chained her before. What if she realized she was stronger than she had ever been? She tasted the possibility, tentatively savored it. Each decision, strategic, survival-focused, crafted the image of what she could become. Was this not the crucible of her self-discovery? But in the periphery of her thoughts, shadows lurked. Echoes of past failures stirred within her. Those victories were mere illusions in the face of actual peril. What if she failed them now? The doubt pressed against her, heavier than the snow that threatened to swallow them whole. Suddenly, a piercing crack shattered the air, and Emily's heart plummeted. A large slab of snow broke loose high above them, sending a shiver coursing through her spine. She glanced up in alarm, adrenaline surging, as an avalanche whispered perilously close on the ridge she had pointed to moments ago. "Run!" she screamed without thinking, instincts propelling her forward as her legs moved autonomously through the unease, all thoughts of self-doubt lost in pure survival mode. They tore across the slope, the world around them becoming an amorphous blend of swirling snow. Emily's breathing became frantic, each inhalation reminding her of what was on the line. Their lives hung in a fragile thread. They dodged impending doom, and with each stride it dawned on her. Even in chaos, she carried a strength she had yet to fully understand. A heavy rumble filled the air, echoing against the mountains as they reached the foot of a more secure outcropping in the terrain. Emily skidded to a stop, heart pounding in her chest, a cacophony of fear and exhilaration spiraling within her. Yet in the stillness that followed, facing her companion, a realization crystallized. Amid the threat of nature's fury, she had carved a path, one where leadership shifted from fear to fierce empowerment. But as they caught their breath, scavenging for safety from the storm, a new intimidation rose within her. Jake's eyes were wide, reflecting the frost-laden expanse that lay before them. She felt a pressing need to not only keep him safe, but also make choices that would define the woman she sought to be amidst chaos. "How are we going to get out of here?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly, laced with uncertainty. Emily's mind raced, weighing possibilities and strategies, but nothing felt certain. A new dilemma had presented itself, the immediate need for a decision that would either solidify her leadership or fracture it. The storm didn't just threaten their bodies, it threatened her resolve. Then, beyond the swirling winds, she spotted movement, a shape just beyond the visibility of the storm. Was it salvation or another looming danger? A confrontation was inevitable, and she felt the familiar churn of apprehension wash over her. The time had come to face whatever lay beyond the haze. What she would unearth could either solidify her growth or threaten to dismantle it altogether. Would she meet this trial as a leader forged in adversity, or would self-doubt threaten to undo all she had worked to reclaim? The wind whipped violently around them, howling like 1,000 lost souls. Emily squinted into the swirling flurries, the shape she had spotted beginning to take form. The shifting mass, dark against the blinding white, could either spell their salvation or their destruction. Her heartbeat raced, a powerful drum backdrop to the chaos of nature, and in that moment, she realized her next move would define everything. "Stay close," she instructed Jake, her voice firm as adrenaline sharpened her senses. They couldn't afford hesitation. They needed to act decisively. The storm roared, but within it, a whisper of courage urged her forward. Emily took a step toward the unknown. With every cautious stride, she felt the enormity of her decisions pressing upon her like the weight of the snow above. What if she misjudged? What if the figure turned out to be a threat? The icy bite of insecurity flickered, but she recognized it for what it was, fear's attempt to paralyze her judgment. As they traversed closer, Emily's hope ignited with clarity. A figure emerged from the storm, a man, sturdy and confident, with a large dog, but even as she felt a wave of relief, another wave of self-doubt threatened to surge forward. Who was she to think she could facilitate their rescue? Would they even heed her presence, or would she falter at the last moment? "Hey, over here!" she shouted, forcing the words out against the wind, her throat raw from the cold and exertion. The man's head snapped in their direction, and instinctively Emily's body tensed. Would he help them? Or was he merely another traveler swallowed by the storm? The dog barked sharply, eyes bright with energy, a reminder of the resolve she too needed to muster. She took a breath, grounding herself in the moment. The man began to move toward them, his gait steady, but behind the piercing focus of his eyes, she could see he too was calculating risks. Was he weighing the likelihood of guiding them safely back to warmth against the dangers inherent in the elements? As they drew nearer, Emily felt the shield of uncertainty begin to crack. "We need shelter," she called again, her voice more assertive as she spotted the dog working through the snow. "Can you help us?" He nodded swiftly, face breaking into an encouraging grin that cut through her growing anxiety. "Follow me. I've got a vantage point where we can regroup." As they followed his lead, Emily's mind shifted into a planning mode. Here was an unfamiliar authority figure, yet she sensed a shift within herself. The instinct to lead remained undiminished, but now it was infused with a learning openness. She would observe, understand, and adapt. With every maneuver he made, partnering effectively with his dog, assessing the terrain, analyzing the wind, Emily assimilated knowledge, evaluating how it could enhance her own burgeoning leadership. Jake remained close, but she could feel his composure wavering again. The shadows of doubt crept in, echoing his earlier panic. Emily glanced at him, desperation igniting her determination. "Trust him, Jake. We're safe now. We're going to make it through this." She pulled from the strength she felt from the stranger's presence, a tangible reassessment of her own capabilities. The storm was a wild beast she could not control, but knowledge, she realized, was a weapon she could wield. With new resolve, Emily focused intensely on the unfolding situation, learning rapidly not just from the man, but also recognizing her ability to remain undaunted amidst uncertainty. Each step resonated with personal discovery. She wasn't merely navigating the physical landscape, but recharting the landscape of her own capabilities. At last, they reached a rocky overhang, a makeshift haven that shielded them from the biting wind. The man maintained an air of focused awareness, commanding both the dog and their progress through the peril. She observed how he took charge and responded with respect to the dog's instincts. Shouldn't a leader do the same, trusting not just themselves but those around them? With the howling winds muffled, Emily felt the weight of fear begin to lift. Safety was now a tangible reality, yet a new uncertainty flickered within. A fork in the road surged to the forefront. This man, adept and attuned, could be more than a rescuer. He could be a mentor. Would she embrace the guidance he offered and in doing so, risk opening an entirely new chapter of growth and insight? As they caught their collective breath, the man's gaze met hers. "You handled that well," he remarked, admiration evident in his tone. Emily, buoyed by a newfound clarity, realized that her journey was far from over. The stone walls of self-doubt were not fully demolished but cracked wide open, revealing a path ahead laden with both opportunities and challenges. But as she stood poised in the shadow of her own potential, she felt the ground tremble anew, a subtle shift foreshadowing the next trial that awaited. What other trials lay ahead, and could she ready herself to face yet another pivotal decision? Emily's breaths came in steady puffs of vapor as they gathered inside the rocky overhang, shielded from the insatiable storm raging outside. The man, who had introduced himself as Tom, began forming a plan. His quick assessment of the surroundings held the weight of experience, and she felt an invigorating resolve swell within her. "First, we need to keep watch for any signs of rescue," Tom said, glancing toward the tempest beyond. "But we also need to consider our next moves." Immediately, Emily's mind raced. Here was a figure who embodied the assurance she had only recently begun to cultivate in herself. She focused intently, absorbing each word, each gesture of leadership he displayed. "Let's gather any supplies we have, then build a better signal," she suggested with newfound authority, surprising even herself. Tom raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed, but Emily had crossed a threshold. The storm was no longer merely an exterior force. It had become a crucible in which she would forge her identity. "Right," Tom nodded, encouraged by her initiative. "That's a great start, Emily." As they scavenged through their packs, exploring the remnants of resources they had brought with them, Emily felt the validation of her decision-making. She retrieved her own backpack, unearthing the remnants of her past life, the textbooks she had nearly abandoned, the snacks she had once associated with mundane moments of study, and now, her lifeline. "I have flares," she said, her voice steady, as she uncovered the small emergency pack. "We can send out signals if the storm calms down." "Excellent thinking," Tom replied, the dynamic of their partnership empowering her. Together with Jake, they began to strategize, dividing responsibilities. Jake found a sturdy branch and fashioned it into a pole to elevate the supplies Emily had gathered. She felt the surge of collaboration sharpening her instincts and reaffirming her growth. "I'm more capable than I ever believed," she thought, her focus now laser-like. She envisioned her future, a veterinarian leading with competence and compassion, healing both animals and their owners through any adversity. Amidst the harrowing winter, Emily felt something shift within. Not just an awareness of her capabilities, but an unyielding confidence that they would emerge triumphant. They had not just faced the storm. They had begun to embrace the uncertain journey to their own transformations. "All right, let's get your signal ready," Tom prompted as they secured the flare high atop their makeshift pole. Emily worked alongside him, each interaction reinforcing her sense of agency. The signals were more than just beacons to attract rescuers. They represented her commitment to seize control of her destiny. "Every moment we take is a step toward defining who we are," Tom remarked as they steadied the pole. Emily nodded, realizing how true those words resonated with her newfound purpose. Back in the shelter of her thoughts, she would have feigned resignation. Now there was a tangible force guiding her decisions. Suddenly, A muted, horrendous sound erupted from the depths of the storm, drawing their focus. An avalanche, larger than anticipated, spun wildly down the mountainside, but instead of retreating into her well-worn fears, it was an adrenaline rush surging through Emily's being. "No, stay focused," she yelled, the ferocity of her voice echoing against the hard rock. Just then, another thought dawned on her, a revelation that crystallized her growth into action. "We need to move," she urged, her conviction solidifying. "If we keep signaling, it will help them find us." And perhaps more than that, it was her opportunity to guide others. She was no longer a passive participant. She was driving the charge, willing herself to confront the chaos not just for her survival, but for those around her. As they began to ascend cautiously towards a more stable shelf where they could better establish their signals, she flagged down Jake. "Stay with me. We can navigate this together." Each step was both a physical and metaphorical ascent. With each lift of her legs, she was shedding doubt, pairing newfound physical resolve with her emotional transformation. Moments later, as the storm avenged their audacity with a fresh flurry of snow, Emily felt the ground shift again, but in this instance, she was ready. "Stay alert," she commanded, and the resolve in her voice compelled both Jake and Tom into action. In the throes of conflict, she saw the truth unfolding before her. Where fear had once dictated her aspirations, every churn of chaos reflected her refusal to minimize her own narrative. The howling wind subsided momentarily, and within that lull, the distant sound of engines reached their ears. The urgency of the moment ignited her once again. "They're coming!" Emily shouted with jubilance, her heart racing. This time, as she signaled furiously with the flares, she felt relief flooding her veins. "Let's get those signals out," Tom replied, and together they worked in unison with a singular purpose, the instinctually forged bond of mutual leadership. In this moment of chaos, Emily understood a profound truth. She had conquered the self-doubt that had anchored her. As the distant outline of searchlight beams broke through the storm, illuminating the chaos that had worn her down, she finally recognized her transformation fully realized. "Look," she pointed, joy surging like fire within her chest as the silhouettes of first responders made their way through the blizzard, guided by the signals she had helped create. When they were finally reached and escorted safely to extraction, Emily felt the weight of her journey coalesce into something valuable. She had not only survived the storm, she had emerged with an undeniably fortified identity. Not just a survivor, but a leader, she thought, looking with confidence across the team surrounding her. As they boarded the rescue vehicle, Emily glanced back at the mountains one final time, the storm clouds now dissipating. She had ventured into her own chaos, but now stood on the cusp of clarity. No longer was she merely a girl clinging to her aspirations. She was a woman who had proven to herself that her dreams were not impassable, but waiting just beyond the storm. The time had come for true transformation. She felt ready to confront her future boldly, and in that moment, she vowed to dedicate her life to healing others, not just as a veterinarian, but as a force of strength, resilience, and hope. With a stark realization, she embraced the journey ahead, and she wouldn't back down. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment their reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support and let your voice matter. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.